Hello everyone and welcome back to the Film Expo South SoundCloud channel. I'm Josh and I'm joined by Paul Lawless today. Paul is a man of many talents, working as a freelance actor, theatre maker, working on community art projects and a creative producer, as well as being a teacher. So today I'm going to be asking him how he became so successful, what he's been working on recently, as well as his industry point of view on the coronavirus crisis. So just to start off with, you obviously you have a very varied career. So you do acting, you do theatre, you do community art projects, you're a producer, you're a teacher as well in some aspects. How do you get from being a university graduate to having such a variety in your career?
That's a good question, really. So when I graduated, I returned home to live with my parents. So for a year, I didn't really do much in the industry. And then after that first year of returning home, I spoke a lot. I contacted a lot of people, so a lot of people within the industry, and spoke with them. So producers and other actors and directors and people within that region to get a sense of what I would need to do and how I would need to prepare to, launch myself in that industry. But also during that time, I had more additional training. So I returned home and I knew a voice teacher who was head of voice acting at Birmingham School of Acting. And I kind of touched base with her and kind of resumed kind of the practical teaching and did the tutelage under her. So I kind of just chased every avenue, essentially, to pursue a career in the industry, and just looked at what skills I needed to hone in order to kind of succeed.
Would you say having such a variety of jobs and having all this different experience over the years has helped you in your acting?
Yeah, I think in a variety of ways, really. I think it's offered me an opportunity to meet more people, which is good because, I've been offered work without applying or auditioning, just because I've met people or I've developed a rapport with them, they've come to see me in other things. So that's been good, but also it's allowed me to have more life experience, really. Whereas before, I guess I'm kind of living in a bit of a insular bubble. I was brought up in a relatively middle class area. So it allowed me kind of more breadth of life experience. Yeah, in that respect it did, but also it's allowed me to diversify my income and allow me to sustain as a freelancer. You can find yourself juggling a lot of things, but it just allowed me to diversify, but also know a bit more about other aspects of the industry, which, is worthwhile knowing when you're pursuing that particular avenue of the industry, being an actor.
When you first graduated, what was your first role as an actor?
I did a semi-professional production at the Nuffield Theatre in Southampton, and that was a contemporary reimagining of Measure for Measure, the Shakespeare play. So that was my first show out of university. And that was a very short run. It was only a week's run.
How long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That show, good heavens, I think it's probably 8 years ago. 7.5, 8 years ago. Yeah.
How would you say that your roles have changed since then? What have you been doing that's been different to that?
Well, I think I've slightly veered off into theatre making. So I've started to make a lot of my own work. And so I think naturally the work that I gravitated to was making work for family audience. So within that sphere of work, I've done a lot of comedy roles, which I love. And there's a little bit more space for improv within those productions, obviously, because, I've helped develop them or co-devised, co-written aspects of the show. So, I always leave breathing space for a bit of improv or audience interaction. So whereas before I was doing more kind of classical or script-based work, which is kind of very regimented in the fact you've got to learn these lines and deliver them. So that's kind of changed a little bit. But I love the challenge of a scripted piece as opposed to something that's more devised and has a little bit more flex in it.
I suppose that's sort of a natural progression from being an actor to then making your own work, because it sort of gives you more creative freedom than just being an actor, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you do have creative license to a degree over the character in scripted work, although the director will often have quite clear or fixed ideas of what that is. But I think once you, just from being in the industry for a few years, you start to just know your craft a bit better and understand writing and how and also blocking and how you stage theatre. So from accruing that knowledge, I ended up kind of having a sense of how it worked a bit more, and like the dynamic between the audience and the actors and the performance and just soaking that up. I guess I felt more confident venturing into that world of theatre making, and I got cast in a show that was like a piece of new writing that went to Edinburgh, went to the Pleasance, and I loved that. And through that experience, that kind of really solidified for me, like, my love and my passion to make work. And just from then on, I've kind of made shows, but also made like pop-up installation work and walkabout characters. I work predominantly with one collaborator, although I am writing with other people as well. And so I love the kind of the flex of it. It doesn't have to just be an end-on show. You don't just sit in an auditorium and watch work. Sometimes it's promenade, sometimes it's walkabout, sometimes it's site-specific or site-responsive. It could be in a warehouse. The audience might not entirely know what the offer will be. It might be part of a festival. So there's I love that, the elasticity of performance.
Something that interests me when I was reading on your website, you do a lot of community art projects. How do you go about deciding what to do for one of those? Because obviously you get approached by someone who wants you to do something for them. How do you decide what the end goal is going to be?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on the project. I think recently, we've been approached by various kind of agencies or commissioners directly, so we haven't had to reply. But usually we apply and we respond to a brief. So that brief can have quite very clear parameters and want certain art forms or disciplines, or it might be a little bit looser or have more flex in it. So I think what we usually do is we look at the brief and we kind of consider what our skill sets are in relation to the brief and what we could bring to it. So usually it's kind of songwriting, gathering lyrics, and then creating a new song, or performance-based. But we have often collaborated with other arts practitioners. So we've brought in like a willow weaver before, and they've helped create a sculpture.
Very, very relevant topic right now, coronavirus. Were you working on anything before this all happened?
Yeah, I mean, there were plans, there were dates in the diary for touring and for festival work and for workshops. Obviously, those events or festivals are no longer going ahead, so that's not happening. But me and my collaborator Jill, we received emergency response funding to deliver a project in a ward in South Bristol, which Jill is based in, which is it's a deprived area. We basically create a project called the CIA, which is a community of indoor artists, and it's basically inspiring primary school children to create work at home and respond to their home environment as a source of inspiration. We've also got other pockets of funding to deliver projects in response to COVID-19. We just got some money in the last few days to create sensory audio stories for those living with dementia, but also others living in care and residential settings that aren't living with dementia. So that they have some offers during this time which is particularly isolating for them. And we're also resident artists with Bristol and Bath R&D and we're working on a research project looking at how we engage teenagers from a low socioeconomic background in performing arts using technology, and looking at whether technology is a swaying factor and whether that helps them engage with that art form. So those projects have been happening, and we're applying for more funding to create work that is either socially distanced or can be facilitated remotely online or through other digital mediums.
We've kept yourself busy, which is the most important thing. You did say at the start of the interview, because obviously you do quite a lot of work, you've diversified your income, which is, good for you. Obviously, there's some in the industry that haven't got that sort of thing. On a theatre perspective, it's going to be a while before this works, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain aspects of theatre that can operate during this time, like outdoor performance. So some pop-up installation work, some walkabout theatre, outdoor touring can happen with certain parameters, adhering to socially distanced guidelines. But I mean, in terms of indoor theatre, studio theatres and art centres and regular theatre spaces, conventional theatre spaces, it's quite tough for varying reasons. But no, I think until there is some preventative medicine, I think it's going to be really difficult to resume to any kind of normality. Obviously, you're in a confined space. And also, theatres only really work when they can meet capacity, and even then, it's a bit precarious, but they just about tick over. These theatres don't have excess and reserves, so it's a really difficult time for them. And unfortunately, until things can resume some kind of normality, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, obviously you said about doing outdoor theatres, but unfortunately not all theatres have the access to the infrastructure. They don't have, say if you're in a city centre, you might not have an outdoor space that's usable or something like that. So it would be, like, that would be in an ideal situation, but not every theatre can do it, which is a shame.
Yeah, for a lot of theatres, like you said, that's not an option. Outdoor space is not at their disposal, so particularly in urban areas. I've seen some theatres in slightly more rural or less densely populated areas, reconsidering the offer and adapting accordingly, and also particularly during the summer months. But nothing's really been able to fully take off, because you've got to remember that it's so last minute that theatres can operate in any kind of way. They don't realise that there's things take time for. You've got to rehearse a show. Yeah. You've got to get the actors on board. You've got to find the funding, or there's so many different strands to getting something back on its feet or creating something for the first time. And it's not as simple as just like, oh right, everyone, right, tomorrow we're going to be performing. It's not as simple as that. There's a lot of pre-production processes, essentially, in order to get things on their feet. It takes time, which is why the industry is probably going to be the last to really resume to kind of to operate as it did before.
Well, you did say just a moment ago that in order for the theatres to be making money or even breaking even, they have to sort of run at a high capacity. So obviously there's all these background costs. You've got all the people behind the stage, all the people that aren't, potentially there on night, all the people that are involved before production, all the people who work ticket offices in the bars and such. So there's such a high cost that people don't realise. I mean, I don't know who it was from, but one of my Facebook friends, she had shared a tweet that someone had put out, and it was saying, this is how much our overhead costs are, this is how much the bills are going to cost us for the night, this is how much the insurance costs us, this blah 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 blah. They would still be, in the negative, even running at the maximum capacity that they can currently run at with the restrictions.
Yeah, it's you got to. People need to recognise, and I don't think people are very aware of it, but the culture of attending theatre and live performance was a bit broken before, I think. And I think people need to realise that if they want to go and see a show, they need to book their ticket in advance. And when they do show up, they do need to buy a drink at the bar, because that's a lot of people. It's a huge industry. And I just think people should be striving to watch more live performance, because I don't think they realise how amazing it is and how much they get from it. But because what will happen is, particularly when you have a family audience, people just will buy tickets on the day, and then they'll be disappointed because they couldn't get a ticket. And it's like, well, you didn't book in advance, and then they'll be like, well, the weather's good today, so I'll take my kids out. It's like, yeah, but that's not. You can't have that mentality, because I know we live in Britain and weather's not a great thing. It's not. It's very changeable. I'll put it like that. Ultimately, this is quite a precarious industry in some respects, and so we need to change. We need to shift the mindset and a culture of how we act as the audience, and then we need to be more respectful that this isn't just like a hobby for people. This is their income. And a lot of these people, they're the breadwinners at home. So I think what's happened over the years is because it's not a tangible art form. It's kind of this ephemeral pop-up thing. People don't. Somehow we've kind of not really. We've devalued it, I guess, and I don't think we see it in the same way as like a tangible art form where we can hold it or purchase it and take it home with us, because you are just creating memories and experiences which I think are equally as valuable or equally as valid. And I think along the way we've not valued that offer in quite the same way, and that's a shame. That's disappointing, because I know, because it's changed my life watching live performances as a kid, and how much of an impact it can have on young minds and burgeoning young minds, and how it can inspire you and imbue you with a sense of worth and helps you cultivate your identity, etc. I could talk for hours about the value of live performance in theatre, but obviously won't do that. So I think there needs to be a shift in the culture of how we consume live performance. Definitely.
Well, I saw someone on Twitter saying, "Oh, why don't they just record it? Why don't they just, get a camera crew and film the performance?" But like you say, it's the experience, isn't it? Anyone can go out and watch something, that's been pre-recorded, go on Netflix, something like that. I'm sure. Disney Plus has Hamilton.
Well, I could sit here and unpick comments like that for hours, but I mean, how you can't see that doesn't translate. Live performance, like a theatre show, doesn't translate the same way. And also, a lot of these companies or artists don't have the equipment to film that. And also, if you really want to effectively film that content, you've got to look at like National Theatre and how do they do it well? Well, they have multi-cameras, and they have expensive technology, and they have people operating that technology, that equipment. Most artists don't have that, and you can't draw a parallel between live performance and sitting on your sofa and watching Netflix or watching a stream of a performance. It's not the same thing. The live dynamic is completely different, and it's unparalleled. It's a completely different experience. They shouldn't be seen in the same light. They're very different.
It's like you were saying. It's the bigger theatres, they will have access to it, but like a smaller theatre that is a month away from going broke, how are they going to do it?
Well, even a lot of regional theatres don't have that equipment to hand, and are financially on the rocks. So it is only a select few that have that equipment at their disposal and have the ability to employ staff to film and edit that, and then pull all those things together. Because if I filmed shows that I've made, it won't translate that well. It won't come across as well as it would in a live sense, and that's the truth of the matter. So to those people, I would argue that they've got the wrong end of the stick entirely.
Is that just you being polite?
Yeah, it's been me being very tactful. which is not how I would normally be, but this is an interview, so I mean...
Got to keep a lid on it for just for now.
I've got to, self-regulate.
And just really one last thing, Paul, just to round it off. Is there anything that you want to promote?
Anything I want to promote? Oh, crikey. So the CIA project that we received funding for this year, which is the Company of Indoor Artists, which is a collective of young agent artists making work. That is going to be launched, and we're going to offer it to a wider audience from next year. So parents with young kids can sign up, they can register, they can subscribe to the Company of Indoor Artists. They can pay an annual fee up front, and they receive monthly offers in the post. And those offers vary. They could be visual art, they might be music, and it's kind of like almost like a training program, essentially. That's kind of how we're framing it a little bit, and they're working towards becoming a fully fledged artist agent over the course of those 12 months. So that'd be a really exciting offer. It's very varied, and it's all kind of framed with this kind of covert, secret kind of spy agency vibe.
I assume that's why you call it CIA then.
Yeah, so kind of nodding towards kind of that. So it's fun, and it's engaging, and it's exciting, and there's lots of varied offers, and that will be launched in the new year, and you can find more information about that on our company website, which is www.bravebolddrama.co.uk, or you can drop us an email at bravebolddrama@gmail.com if you are interested in that as an offer. And I'm applying to the Arts Council to develop a theatre show that I've been writing about the National Front, set in the 80s, just kind of like a drama thriller, and I'm looking to eventually present that in as a live performance, but at the same time I'm currently looking at creating an audio version of that show. The show's called Sub, and also utilise binaural audio and master the audio so it has kind of that immersive feel, and hopefully that will be available again in the new year. It's all kind of funding dependent, so fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed indeed. Paul, thank you very much for joining me today. Have a good one.
Cool, thank you, Josh.
And also a big thank you for listening. If you're interested to see what the rest of us are doing, make sure to check out the Film Expo South social media channels, your preference of course, and keep an eye on our SoundCloud on our website for more. Thank you very much.